Pregame.com.
'49ers -4 at Arizona, and we'd like to introduce Scott Spreitzer. Scott, welcome.
Hey, it's
You've
good to
got a
be here.
long history. We usually are going to do these videos nice and short, but you've been on TV for years, and why don't you tell us just a little bit about your history in the business?
We started out on the Stardust line, which was way back around 1991. And I used to do Friday nights and Saturday nights on a station here in Las Vegas that was a clear channel, still is, and was broadcast at nighttime into about 13 states. They used to pipe it into the Caliente Sportsbook down in Tijuana. So we got known that way some 20 years ago. And then we got working with another group where we were on a show called Proline on the USA Network. And I was there basically for about 15 seasons of the 25 years it was on, did a show called Sports Desk. And so we got really well known really fast in the 90s before the big internet boom came along.
All right, and I tell you, a lot of those guys, we're always frank with our audience, a lot of those guys, you know, the selling style was aggressive, and a lot of those guys today, quite frankly, are out of the business because, or they're struggling, might be the way to say it. But to me, some of those guys, and Dave Koken is a guy that was in that crew, and he's a mainstay on local Vegas radio here, they really are good handicappers. And what we've been able to do, luckily, with the success of pregame, is cherry pick the guys that we think can kind of do it in the next iteration of things, which is community-based, and a lot of the things where we're interacting with each other, and that's something that you want to embrace.
Well, that's the whole thing. And, you know, I worked with Dave, and I still do quite a bit. Dave and I have been friends since the late 1980s. We go back to AM radio in Las Vegas around 1988 doing boxing and things of that nature. So he taught me a lot. He was in the business before I was, and the late, great Mike Lee was a guy who really gave me a head start and taught me just kind of what you do on the air and what you don't do. And the thing is, if I was going to be a guy who never decided to move on past the 1990s, I sure wouldn't have kept the name Spreitzer, which is the real thing. That's the real name. But no, we've enjoyed working on TV. We've done a lot of radio. We still do in Las Vegas and around different parts of the country. But I'm very happy to be sitting next to you, who I've known for a few years. I've been watching grow this thing just incredibly, I mean, over the last couple of years.
You know, we're proud of it, but really what we're proud of is that, and it's actually something, you know, Johnny, my main partner, is, you know, we were guys that didn't have the sight we wanted as gamblers. And I think the best companies usually stem from a need of the founders to say, this is something I want, it's not out there. And something I always believed when I was back in Ohio in '89, I was just a first year of college, is I said, if only you could get 20 or 30 of the smartest guys working together, that's the way you're going to beat the bookie, because quite frankly, you're not competing against the bookie, you're competing against the betting marketplace, and that is worldwide, and you're really competing against Billy Walters, you're competing against, you know, plug-in pro better name, and if you're going to do that, you better have some people on your side. And that's been what we've tried to build, and you know, it's been we're pretty happy how it's growing.
Well, I've been able to stay in the business from back when I had hair halfway down my back and a beard, and I used to be able to sneak up on the Las Vegas bookmakers because they thought I was just another dope off the street.
So did you have the Kurt Cobain, like did you have the army jacket?
I was the original grunge rocker of the handicapping world, and as you can see, it's changed a little bit. It had a lot to do with not being able to grow hair on the top of my head, though.
You know, Marco's in the suit, you're in the suit. Now I'm going to have to upgrade at some point, I guess. Well, listen, we'll do a Meet the Pros is what we call it. Is we usually have a video where we really dig into the past. But let's get into this game. You've got a strong pick on this 49ers game. Who do you like and why?
Well, I'll tell you what, when I start breaking these games down, when I'm looking at San Francisco at Arizona, I'm trying to figure out if San Francisco is going to be motivated for this game. And I really throw that by the wayside because they did wrap up their division last week. But they're still trying to be the second seed behind Green Bay and ahead of New Orleans. And you've got a competitive guy like Jim Harbaugh who says we're not going to rest players. Now, when I look at that, you got to kind of read between the lines in our business. A guy like Patrick Willis, who's listed as doubtful for this game. I would think if this game really mattered, he's playing no matter what. He still may give it a go, but...
Well, let's be honest, unless I'm mistaken, Peppers from Chicago is the only doubtful guy in the last 2 seasons that's actually played.
Exactly.
So doubtful pretty much means out.
Yep.
Do you disagree on
No, I think he probably does. If Harbaugh's going to say doubtful at this point, it does mean he's going to be out. I do think if this was an extremely important game, was for a potential division championship rather than the week after they wrapped it up, then I think Willis would probably give it a go. At least be out there in uniform before the game, doing what he normally does in preparation for the game to see if he can get over the injury and play. So for those reasons, I'm not really buying into the belief that Harbaugh is going to play all of his starters if they're banged up. I think you've got to keep them sharp, no doubt about it. But if there's any kind of injury whatsoever that may grow into something bigger that hurts him down the road, he's going to be smart enough to sit him on the sideline.
So let's talk about this motivation, because I guess with the 2 losses, the whole Green Bay 1 seed is out of reach. I mean, there's a possibility.
Sure.
But your point is, and remember, the bigger jump is between the 2 and 3 seed, because the 3 seed has to play the first weekend. Top 2 gets a bye. Clearly, you got to figure there's motivation there.
Exactly, and the kind of guy Harbaugh is, as I said, the competitor that he is. Even if they had the 2 seed wrapped up, I still think he has a little bit more motivation for his team and his starters to play than most coaches in this position would, especially in his freshman season as a head coach in the NFL.
So you've got, let's call it, we've defined the motivation on the 49ers as high. All right, now what's the other factors in the game?
Look at Arizona, what they've done. This team was 1-6 after an October 30th loss to the Baltimore Ravens. But out of that 1-6 record, if you look
Which
a little bit more,
won. They were big. They were up big in that game.
Exactly. And if you look at they had 4 losses out of that 1-6 record that came by a grand total of 11 points. I mean, Arizona, believe it or not, everybody's ripping the Kevin Cobb experiment, as they call it, or Skelton being at quarterback. This team was that close to being 5-2 after October rather than 1-6. And it probably tells you why this team has broken through a little bit, and they're now 4-1 in their last 5 straight up. They've covered 5 of their last 6. There's those arguments that say, well, if it wasn't for special teams, they wouldn't even be. You know what? That's a third of the game. You've got offense, defense, and special teams, and you've got to factor that into your handicapping, especially when a team is really good or really bad in doing that particular part of the game. Arizona's really good at special teams. Now, San Fran is also, but Arizona's a little bit better.
Okay, so what you're saying is this is a play, since you think San Fran's going to be motivated, it's not a situational play. This is a power rankings play. You think Arizona simply is better than the numbers indicate.
Yeah, we grabbed a little piece of Arizona last week when they played Dallas. Thought the line was a little bit too high. It came crashing down to about 4-ish.
Yeah, it opened 6, 6.5, down to 4.
And this one is open lower, and part of that reason is, so you're not getting as much value as you did with Dallas, but part of that reason is because of what they did last week, that they've won 4 out of their last 5, and of course that San Francisco has wrapped up the division, but I still think more than a field goal is worth it for that reason. You know, and the reason, RJ, that San Francisco has done so well, and Baltimore kind of showed the chink in the armor for the San Francisco 49ers, going into Thanksgiving weekend, there was a great report. I forget who did it on TV, and they were talking about Alex Smith, that quarterback, is hitting 71% at the time during the season through Thanksgiving. 71% on first down was his completion rate. That was number 1 in the NFL. San Francisco was throwing the fewest amount of passes on third down, which means they weren't making Smith manage the game. The coaches were managing the game with their play calling, and they were setting things up so Alex Smith wouldn't be in that position to make that huge mistake. But Baltimore was able to crimp up a little bit on the offensive line with their defensive line, and also stack up sometimes on second down and 7, second down and 8, and kind of try to throw that little system out of whack. And I think Arizona can do that this week. I think they've got enough because of a guy like Patrick Peterson where they can sneak a guy up, cheat a little bit, if you will, on first down, take away some of those short first down throws, make them have a second down and 9, second down and 10, where they actually have to think before they just run the ball on second and long.
So give us your official projection.
Okay, well, I got to say that Arizona wins this game outright. I'm going to say 20-17. Arizona plus the points, though. I'm always about taking the points unless I'm really crazy about a team winning outright. I still think Harbaugh's motivated enough, but I also do think Arizona is going to win outright. You have to, if you're going to take less than a touchdown in my book, you have to feel that your team has a great shot at winning outright.
Here's what concerns me, and you brought it up, is San Fran and Cowboys on a neutral. What's your line?
San Fran and the Cowboys on a neutral field. Boy, I think for betting purposes, if I'm a sports book director and I'm worried about balancing out the action, on a neutral field, I'm still going to make Dallas an extremely short favorite because of Cowboy backers.
So this is something VR talks about, and you're going to do a video with him, is true line and fair line.
Right.
True line is if God made a line and was going to split the result,
right.
and a fair line splits the action.
Right.
You were and if there's a better bias, it's going to be the difference between, if there is no better bias, true line and fair line is going to be the same, but the better bias adjusts on the fair line. What's your true line? What splits the result between San Fran and Dallas?
Split in the action would be, for me, I would make Dallas the 1 point favorite.
That's what you said, yeah.
But power rankings, neutral field, San Francisco 2.5 points better than the Dallas
that's what I
Cowboys.
would have thought.
Right.
All right, so the Dallas was in the same situation traveling to Arizona, and they were laying the opening number. The guys that Greek or Chris,
Sure.
some of the smartest bettors in the world said, and bookmakers and bettors said 6.5. All right, it was bet down. They said, no, you're wrong. It was bet down. Now you're getting even less than that, less than the open and less than where it closed with a team against a team that you say is better. Did you think there was that much value in the if Dallas was playing Arizona right now, same scenario from last week, they replay the game, what is your true line? What splits the results?
They're going to drop the line down again if Dallas is playing now because of public perception. So
is it pick 'em?
I don't think it's that low.
All right, so let's call it 2.5.
2.5-ish. Yeah.
All right, and here you're getting how many points?
Here you're getting 4.
So but San Fran's the better team. Is there enough value? Is this just a matter of 3 being so key?
Well, it's a matter of that. I think that you've got San Francisco off of winning their division for one thing. You've got an extremely...
So you are questioning the motivation.
Well, to a certain extent. I'm not saying that this is like, I'm trying to think of
what
it was in the late
bit,
90s with Denver. In the late 90s when they got upset by Jacksonville, I think it was 1997 in the playoffs, and they turned the light switch off around week 13, week 14. They tried to turn it on in the playoffs. Harbaugh's not going to do that. He's not going to be an extremist one way or the other in this particular football game. There's a slight bit of motivation for this team, but also at the same time, if there's any questionable injury that takes place in this game, he's smart enough to sideline that player. And I think that's the difference for me, at least, in the actual line as far as the game is concerned, power rankings. I'm not here to get equal betting. I'm here to beat the spread. And so for those reasons, I factor that into it. But I know exactly what you're saying. You had more value with maybe a lesser team last week with the Dallas Cowboys.
But if there was enough value there can still, relatively, this might be a lesser play, but it doesn't mean it's not a profitable play.
Exactly.
Now, Marco and I talk about this a lot, is that when we talk about motivation, it isn't necessarily that the team doesn't care. It goes from 100% to 97%. And that little difference, and you see it all, there's only 16 games in the NFL, but I keep bringing it up. Baltimore, after both Pittsburgh games, had motivational part. They were trying to win.
Sure.
Everyone cared, but it's at, maybe they have a couple extra drinks on Wednesday night. Maybe it's whatever. So, any closing thoughts?
Well, yeah, just following up on that real quickly. If you got Mike Tomlin or a Bill Belichick who are extremely experienced in going deep into the playoffs each year and know what it's like to be 13-1 when everybody else is chasing each other for a playoff spot, I think you go from 100% to 96.5%. A new guy, especially with his motivation, it probably goes from 100% down to 97%, not quite down to 96.5%. I guess I'm splitting hairs a little bit here, but my final thought here is that, again, I think Arizona is being undervalued enough to make a play on the Cardinals this week. I still think they're being undervalued in their situation like they were last week, although the value is getting smaller.
Last question is, one of the things I've been doing is VegasRankings.com. I've been talking about it, and we rank injuries too and put a number on those. These are some of the biggest sportsbook directors in the world: Jimmy Vaccaro, Johnny Avello, all the way down the line, Jay Kornegay, can't forget him. What would you put your point value between Skelton and Cobb?
As far as a scale
of the last week, I'm saying...
I know last week Cobb went nuts, 109.9 quarterback rating.
So what I'm saying is, if you found out Cobb couldn't play this game, but let's say it was found out on Monday, so there was a whole week of preparation, Skelton, it wasn't going to be a last-minute throw him in the game, how much do you adjust your power ranking on Arizona?
Point and a half.
Point and a half. All right, interesting. Because that's where we started it, and then Skelton came on a little bit, and we almost had it at even, and then Skelton, didn't come on later. So.
And here's just real quick to wrap this up. What I like to do, and an old warhorse, an old dinosaur I like to call him, who still makes his living betting games, and that's all he does, taught me 20 years ago when I first met him. He kind of took me under his wing. He's in his 70s now, and he said, always make your lines a week in advance. So my lines for this particular game were made before Arizona played Dallas. And that's
so you don't overreact to what you see most recently.
You don't do what the public's doing.
And that's what they do.
Exactly.
All right, guys, good stuff. I think we're lucky to have Scott on, and the nice thing about these videos is you really get to figure out how he thinks about these games and decide if he's for you or if he's not. And if he's not, well, try to be a little nice, even if you disagree. Remember, all of our videos are in a super thread every week in the forum. You can go there directly, pregamevideos.com, and what we do is put our show notes, and you got a lot of notes, so Scott will put his show notes in there, and then we'll answer any questions you might have about the video. Pregamevideos.com. Talk to you there.